You wake up already late, not late enough to panic, just late enough to feel rushed in a quiet way. You don't think, I'm afraid. You think, I don't have time. But when did your morning start feeling like something you're trying to escape from? You move through the routine automatically. Phone, bathroom, clothes, keys. Your body knows the order even when your mind feels foggy. Do you notice how little space there is before the day starts asking things from you? Not big things, small ones. Replies, decisions, explanations. At what point did silence in the morning start feeling uncomfortable? You check your phone before you check how you feel. Not because you care what's there, because not knowing feels worse. Is it really information you're looking for, or proof that the world is already moving without you? On the way to work or wherever you're supposed to be, your jaw is tight, not clenched, just set. When did your body learn to hold itself like this? You're not thinking about danger. You're thinking about outcomes, deadlines, mistakes that haven't happened yet. When did fear stop feeling dramatic and start feeling administrative? At work, you do what you're supposed to do. You answer things. You nod. You say yeah at the right moments. Do you notice how often your answers come out before you actually decide them? Someone asks you a question. You respond quickly. Not because you're confident, because hesitation feels risky. When did pausing start to feel like exposure? You keep your screen busy, even when there's nothing urgent, even when you're just rearranging things you've already done. What would it feel like to stop moving for 10 minutes at your desk? Not resting, just not hiding behind activity. You tell yourself you're being responsible, productive, on top of things. But what happens inside you when there's nothing left to do? There's a specific tension that shows up then. Not panic, not sadness, a pressure to fill the space. When did emptiness start to feel unsafe? Money sits quietly in the background of everything. Even when you're not thinking about it, it's thinking about you. You're not afraid of being poor. You're afraid of slipping, of one mistake changing the tone of your life. When did stability start feeling fragile instead of solid? You calculate without realizing you're calculating. Can I afford this? Is this worth it? What if something unexpected happens? Do you remember the last time you bought something without rehearsing the consequences first? You don't talk about this fear, not because it's embarrassing, because it feels constant. How do you explain something that never turns off? Someone asks how you're doing. You say fine, not as a lie, as a shortcut. When did honesty start feeling like too much work? You avoid certain conversations, not big confrontations, small clarifications, the kind that might lead to expectations. What are you afraid people would ask of you if you were fully clear? You delay replying to messages that aren't urgent, not because you're busy, because every reply opens a door. When did communication start to feel like a commitment trap? You tell yourself you'll answer later. When you have more energy, more clarity, a better mood. How often does later quietly turn into never? At night, your body finally slows down, but your mind doesn't follow. You replay moments that weren't even bad, a tone you used, a look you might have misread. Why do neutral memories come back sharper than the good ones? You're not imagining disasters. You're reviewing possibilities. When did rest turn into a planning session? You scroll until your eyes hurt, not for pleasure, for distraction. What are you hoping to outrun in those last minutes before sleep? Fear doesn't shout anymore. It schedules itself. It shows up as preparation, as caution, as being realistic. When did fear learn to sound like your own voice? You pride yourself on being self-aware, on noticing patterns, on understanding why you feel the way you feel. But do you ever use that awareness to keep yourself stuck? You can explain your fear perfectly, but explanation isn't the same as feeling it move. What would happen if you stopped analyzing it and just noticed where it lives in your body? There are things you don't try anymore, not because you failed, because you didn't fail fast enough. When did slow disappointment start feeling worse than sudden rejection? You tell yourself you're being selective, careful, intentional. But how many doors have you closed quietly without ever touching the handle? You watch other people take risks, not big heroic ones, small, messy ones. They speak without rehearsing. They decide without certainty. What do you feel in your chest when you see that? Not jealousy, something closer to grief. For a version of yourself that used to move before thinking. When did thinking become the gatekeeper? You remember a time when fear felt different, louder, clearer, easier to name. Now it's subtle, professional, polite. When did fear stop asking for permission? It shows up when you're about to relax, when you're about to enjoy something, a quiet thought. Don't get too comfortable. What are you afraid will happen if you let your guard down completely? You don't feel unsafe. You feel exposed, like something could be taken. Time, money, respect, momentum. When did life start feeling like something you have to protect instead of live? You measure yourself constantly against coworkers, friends, strangers online, not to win, to avoid falling behind. When did comparison become a survival tool? You rarely feel present, even during good moments. Part of you is always checking the edge of the room. Mentally, what are you scanning for? There's a specific tiredness that comes from this. Not physical, not emotional, a vigilance fatigue. How long has your nervous system been on standby? You don't cry much, not because you're numb, because crying feels inefficient. When did emotions start needing a justification? You prefer being in control of schedules, of expectations, of impressions. But control takes energy. What are you sacrificing to keep everything managed? Sometimes you fantasize about disappearing, not dying, not running away, just not being required. When did existing start feeling like an obligation? Fear doesn't ask you to stop. It asks you to stay the same. It rewards predictability, punishes curiosity. How many parts of you have learned to stay quiet to avoid consequences? You're good at explaining why now isn't the right time, why later will be better, why conditions need to improve first. How long have you been waiting for permission that isn't coming? You don't feel trapped. You feel paused, like life is buffering. What are you afraid would load if things suddenly started moving? Even joy feels risky sometimes, because joy raises stakes. When did happiness start feeling like something that could be revoked? You tell yourself you're grateful, and you are, but gratitude doesn't cancel fear. Why do you treat them like they're supposed to replace each other? At the end of the day, when everything is quiet, there's a moment before sleep where the noise fades. In that moment, what do you feel rushing in to fill the silence? Not thoughts, a sensation, a tightening, a holding. Fear doesn't want attention, it wants compliance. And you've been very cooperative, not because you're weak, because you learned how. The question isn't when fear started, it's when you stopped questioning the shape it took, and whether the life you're protecting so carefully is the one you're actually living.